So today we're going to talk about the 5 meta secrets that we have learned from Lock-In. And let's just dive straight in and start with number 5. And number 5 is that unfortunately, Lotus seems to not have a settled meta yet. I really wanted to come into this video and be like, oh yeah, Lotus, this is what you should play on Lotus, but it turns out no one really knows just yet because 17 out of 20 agents have been played at least once on Lotus at Lock-In, which is a crazy amount. And only 3 of those 17 agents are at or above 50%. Those are Omen at 81%, Killjoy at 69%, and Raze at 50%. And so only 1 is above 75%. And for context, on maps like Ascent and Icebox, there are 4 agents on both those maps that are on or above 75%, whereas for Lotus, we only have Omen. So for definite, I could probably only say Omen is definitely meta on this map. Killjoy seems like she will be, and Raze seems like a pretty good option. But apart from that, I have absolutely no idea where we're going to go from there. Also, Lotus currently has a 60-40 attack side win rate. Now, that is not uncommon for new maps as, people are learning how to play and correctly defend the map, when to rotate, where to rotate, how to rotate, all of those kind of things. And of course, if there are any gaps in your armor as a defensive side, that is going to benefit the attackers. Generally, chaos is going to benefit the attackers. And so obviously, as the map is still new, people are still learning. That's not unheard of. We've seen this for other maps as well, like Fracture and Breeze. In fact, Fracture at Champs 2021 also had a 60-40 attack side win rate that then evened out over time. And maybe, look, if this continues on the same way it is right now, maybe Riot, might need to make some little tweaks to make it a bit easier for the defensive side. But this is nothing, crazy just yet, but it is perhaps noteworthy. Okay, moving on to number 4, and for number 4, we have Astra on Split. Now, in the lead up to Masters Copenhagen, when Split was last in the map pool, the pick rate for Astra versus Omen on the map was almost exactly 50-50. It was very, very close between the two agents, with Astra slightly edging it at Masters Copenhagen itself, but it was still pretty close. But since the return of Split into the map pool, we've seen a lot of teams going for Astra instead of Omen, and at Lock-In, it's currently 80-20 in favor of Astra. Now, we haven't had a massive sample size, there hasn't been a ton of games played on Split, but if you take a look at, some of the Challengers leagues as well, it seems like, quite a few teams are favoring Astra. Now, this might be because of some of those Omen nerfs where the one-ways are a bit more difficult to place, although you can still do pretty much every one-way you could before. They're just a bit more precise, and so, maybe you'll miss them a couple times and whatnot. But it also, I think, has to do with Viper coming back in on Split as well, where we're seeing a lot of Viper. She has a 60% pick rate so far at Lock-In. And, people like that combo of Astra Viper, right? That's a combo that we saw for a very long time during kind of the Astra Viper meta, as it was known, back in the day. And so with teams, seemingly liking Viper on this map as well, it seems that people are going for kind of the ideal combo agent there and going for Astra and Viper on Split. And now let's come to number 3, and this one I probably didn't expect to come onto this list. If you asked me, to predict what would be on this list at this point before the tournament, I probably wouldn't have said this, because maybe there is space for double duelist in pro play. And that's because we've seen quite a few different teams running double duelist, including some of the top teams as well. This isn't just, the teams with nothing to lose coming out with double duelist. And the thing is, it's been pretty successful as well. In games where there was a double duelist comp facing against a comp that was not a double duelist, the double duelist teams are 7-2 so far in those games at Lock-In. And one of those losses was RRQ playing Reyna on Lotus, which I almost feel shouldn't actually count towards this stat. So, 7-1 if you want to throw out the Reyna game as well. But the more traditional pairing of Raze and Jett has been finding quite a bit of success. We've seen teams like Loud run it on both Fracture and Split to a ton of success. We've seen Fnatic and Vitality as well run it on Split. And so it seems like, yeah, there's definitely some chance there that Raze Jett, obviously you want that Jett op, you want the good op character on the defensive side, but then Raze is just good on Split and Fracture, so you play Raze as well. Seems like that's not too bad of an idea, and, maybe more teams should be giving it a shot. Moving on to number 2, and again, this one kind of surprised me quite a bit, but that is about Skye, because Skye is kind of back. Now, when the map rotation first happened and Breeze and Bind were the two maps that were rotating, I was hitting the panic button for all the Sky fans out there, because of course Bind was kind of Sky's home map and Breeze was probably her second best map as well. So you lose your top two maps in a map pool and you're not, Sky wasn't like the top of the meta anyway. That's a pretty rough time if you are a Sky fan. But actually, in this tournament, Sky is doing okay. It's not exceptional, but she's doing okay. And that actually is a pretty big surprise to me because, when we looked at some of the challenger leagues as well and teams were starting to pick Bind and Breeze less, in those leagues, we weren't seeing a ton of Sky on the other 5 maps either, but it seems like Split and Lotus, are 2 maps where Sky is seeing a decent amount of pick rate, and then we're also seeing some Sky on some other maps as well. So what is going on? Well, to me, it's not necessarily even to do with Sky herself, it's more to do with the rest of the comp, because we've seen quite a few teams move away from double initiator comps on certain maps. They're playing double Sentinel, double Duelist, or double Controller instead, and that is where Sky comes in, because Sky is kind of the jack of all trades, master of none initiator. She has some hard gathering info, but not as much as Silver or Fade, and she has some flashing and setting up teammates or herself for easier kills, but maybe not as much as Breach or KO. So if you are running 2 initiators, you're probably going with one of Silver or Fade and one of Breach or KO, and you can see that on a ton of different maps. But when you only have one initiator, then you probably want what Sky is offering. You can still have your flashes and your info gathering in one agent, and that is why Sky, I think, has been seeing some play as teams move away from the double initiator and to a double duelist, double sentinel, double controller, where then you want Sky to kind of fill out the comp so that you still have some information gathering, but you still have those flashes as well. And then finally, we come to number 1. And really, there was only one thing to put at the top of this list, and that is Viper Harbor. Because when Harbor came out, he was seen as the competitor to Viper, to end her long reign on certain maps. But that has not been the case at this tournament, because we've seen multiple teams on multiple maps pair both Viper and Harbor together and find success doing that. Now, Harbor, of course, has been one of the weakest agent, and he's got some, buffs over time, but this is finally probably the first time we've seen, multiple teams running Harbor and finding success with him. And as I said, it is often paired with Viper as well. For instance, Loud have been running Viper Harbor on Pearl, and it looks like one of the maps that they're most comfortable on, and they found a lot of success and had some really cool ideas. I, in fact, made a whole video about that as well, about, how this looks like a really good use of Harbor, and Loud have been doing really well on Pearl. And the same can be said for DRX as well, who've brought out Viper Harbor on Icebox, and it looked insanely good. So good, in fact, that I expect, after this tournament, we'll start to just see more teams running Viper Harbor on Icebox and using that combo to find, all sorts of different crazy ideas. And that might become, a decent part of the meta share on Icebox. And of course, we can't forget Furia either, who took this pairing to Haven. I mean, at least for Pearl and Icebox, Viper was already either somewhat meta or, very meta on Icebox. But on Haven, this was absolutely crazy. And when I saw that comp, everyone was going, what the hell are they doing? And ultimately, they didn't end up winning against Fnatic. They did lose the map. But considering how good Fnatic have looked thus far, Furia having multiple chances to win the map and looking very competitive against a great team on their map pick was really quite impressive. And again, it looked like they had ideas, and it looked like Fnatic were a bit confused at times, and Boaster even said after the game, if he knew that they were going to pick Viper Harbor on Haven, he probably would have banned the map. And so, although Viper Harbor were, potentially designed to be somewhat competitors, it seems like maybe pairing them together does have its benefits as well, and that, on certain maps, you can make that pairing work, and it's not that bad of a pairing to use. So maybe we'll see that coming out a bit more. And those were the 5 different meta secrets that we have kind of learned from Lock-In as we go forward.